Welcome to another edition of the 49er Goldcast.
San Francisco, are you ready? Bam! Welcome to another edition of the 49er Goldcast. We are the voice of the faithful. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis first, baby.
And no esteemed co-host. Old man Davis went over to, where'd he go? To the outside lands, and he hasn't been seen since.
He's not at Raiders camp.
Definitely not at Raiders camp. So we've got a lot to talk about, Raymond. The preseason is upon us. It is here. We are so close now. And I think the first big story coming out of this past weekend, out of Hall of Fame weekend, is that Eddie D. Bartolo has finally been inducted into the Hall of Fame. The Dynasty team is complete. What do you think about that?
It's about time. This was something that, you were talking about, probably the greatest owner in NFL history.
No question. No question.
The greatest lineage of players and coaches to come from that era.
The thing I really liked about the Hall of Fame speech that he delivered, if you haven't seen it online, faithful, definitely go check it out. You could see it on YouTube, is that he basically walked down memory lane and he talked about a lot of the big guns. He talked about Bill Walsh, George Seifert. He talked about Steve Young. He talked about Joe Montana, Ronnie Lott, Jerry Rice, Charles Haley. He said that he was proud. He said that Charles Haley, I'm paraphrasing just a bit, but Charles Haley, the greatest Dallas Cowboy they ever had was the 49er. And I thought that was great.
Yeah, that was a great reference.
Yeah, that's a nice little jab. I thought that was awesome. I was like, even after all these years, still has the fight in him. I thought that was great. But it was also very cool to see all of those Dynasty legends sitting in the crowd and reacting to his speech. They kept kind of coming back to all of them, and I thought that was great. It was, Eddie was a hard owner. He was beloved, absolutely beloved by the team, but he definitely was no nonsense. I think he fired, according to Carmen policy, he fired Bill Walsh 11 times.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. I know that he threw a Coke can at his head once too. So
it was tough. I mean, because you have a brand new, unproven coach who's also kind of reinventing the game. So it's like, all right, in one regard, you don't understand the game as it is, at least the X's and O's part. And here you have a new coach trying to put new X's and O's into the mix. And so you're like, as an owner who, most owners really are kind of control freaks, that's got to be a nerve-wracking situation. But at the same time, the results kind of speak for themselves. But whenever they slip up, that's kind of a moment for any kind of ardent owner to come in and say, hey, see, this wasn't going to last, or this wasn't meant to be, or you can't, your revolution isn't foolproof.
Yeah. I mean, he literally, Eddie D demanded greatness, and his goal was to put the team in a financial position to have the best players possible so they could win the Super Bowl every single year. That was the goal. And he was hyper competitive. Bill Walsh was hyper competitive. It was just the perfect storm. 80 to 94 was the perfect storm. It really was. You had coaches, owner, and players all in perfect harmony, all heading towards one goal, and that was to win the Super Bowl and be the best team ever. And the closest team that's even come to what the 49ers accomplished was the New England Patriots, but it took them they only won 4 Super Bowls in 16 years, and obviously there's a tremendous amount of controversy surrounding all those victories. But again, having said that, that's the closest that anyone's ever come to what the 49ers were able to do. Dallas had a nice little run, but it was only 3 in one decade, and they were irrelevant in the 10 years before and in the 20 years since. And the the dynasty era from 81 to 95 is some of the most dominant football of all time. They said this when they were introducing Eddie D. They said that from 1981 to 1998, the 49ers averaged 13 wins a year. Just insane. Now, Raymond, here's a question. Do you think, will Chip get us to that level?
He's unproven, so it's really all theory at this point.
Yeah.
He's wrong. He's won at the collegiate level. He's had success in the NFL level. He's also learned kind of the hardship of getting too much power at the NFL level too, which I think was really good because good for him, good for his growth, because people are already noticing that he seems different this time around. Naturally, I feel like that situation kind of humbled him, just kind of like, hey, it doesn't matter how good you're doing, the second you screw up, the tables can turn on you just on a dime.
You will be fired as quickly as you were hired.
And that's it. And so I think to a large degree that situation humbled him, and now he's kind of back to kind of just focusing on what he does best, which is coach football. And he's doing it also in some uncharted territory, whereas the 49ers are kind of in a rebuilding phase, and he's never really necessarily had teams to rebuild, per se from the ground up, certainly not at the NFL level. I still think everyone's kind of, anything would have been better from last year. So all of the positive praise that he's getting right now is all, there's twofold to it. So one of it is coming from the fact that they're all coming off of one of the worst seasons they've had since Harbaugh took over, really. Yeah. And also or even since before that, because I'd say, since the Mike Singletary era is one of their worst seasons, injury-wise, playing-wise, statistically, you name it. It was just up and down terrible. But then the other part of it is that they're also with a new coaching staff, so everything kind of gets wiped clean. So you feel refreshed automatically because it's like no one's really going to take jabs at you. They're just going to put you back out on the field and kind of reevaluate you, because coaching was a part of the problem last year. If it wasn't, that would be a different story. But since it was, and it was a huge factor, that gives everybody a second chance, and everybody who, even the quarterbacks, we all thought Colin was going to be gone. That deal never got through. So now here he is getting another shot at the starting gig, his second time at that. Gabbert's getting another shot as well, his second time since being in the NFL. So it's going to be interesting. I don't know if he'll take us to the promised land, but I think he's got the wits to do it. He's got a good staff around him. It's a really smart staff. They're all on the same page, it appears. So the only thing left to do is to kind of test it all out there. Put it through the lab of in the regular season
and see what happens.
Yeah.
I really that's all we can really do at this point is just sit back and see what happens when it
that's
comes
all that's
to
left. Yeah, and that starts this Sunday, really.
Are you excited?
I am, because it kind of crept up on me. We've been following the Niners, obviously, and kind of putting out some podcasts for everybody here and there, but and also taking care of our day-to-day lives. And so now it just feels like, oh wow, A, we're in August, and B, the Niners play this Sunday. So
I'm so pumped.
Finally come full circle. The next 4 weeks, we'll be getting a good look at the first and second teams, which are kind of the most important teams to be paying attention to, just because those are the guys that are most likely going to get put on the 53 roster. So we just got to see who stands out, particularly with the rookies who are obviously moving up, especially the two first-round draft picks, who, according to Niner reports right now coming out of camp, are moving up the depth chart. So Buckner has been working with the first and second team defensive line groups. Garnett, he was working with the third team. Now he's moved to the second team. So that's great, because these are guys that are most likely going to start. So you want them to kind of get acquainted with the players that they're going to be playing with on a regular basis. And Buckner's been doing it. Garnett is a little bit later because he was still in Stanford, and NFL policy doesn't allow him to attend any practices or camps while he's still in session, so he had a late start. Otherwise, he would be, I think, right there with Buckner working with the first teams too.
Well, I'm pretty pumped. I'm pretty excited. Here's something I want to say to the faithful. it's been a couple rough years, and I think it's a little tough when when the Niners have struggled in an era when the Giants and the Warriors are at, peak powers. But just remember, San Francisco, first and foremost, has always been and will always be a football city. This is the city of red and gold. This is the house that Eddie D, Bill Walsh, George Seifert, Joe Montana, Steve Young. This is the house of Jerry Rice. This is the house they built. This is their house. And I love me some Giants. I love me some Warriors. But the San Francisco 49ers are the heart and soul of Bay Area sports. And don't let anybody take that away. We are the very first California team, the very first professional California sports team. Very first professional team in California was the 49ers right here in San Francisco. That means something. Do not let that go. Yeah, believe that. Keep the faith. All right? To be the man, you got to beat the man. And I believe that the 49ers, while we're in a rebuild mode, it's going to be better than last year. Hold your head high because it's going to come back around. It has to. We were so close. 3 years ago. But you know what? It's going to come back around. And I'm a believer too. And so, let's not give up the faith just yet. All right?
Definitely not. I mean, you got to remember, the NFL is the hardest of the three major American sports to stay on top for an extended period of time. And it's mostly just usually a handful of teams, and then they kind of rotate out depending on how good, they're managed and how good drafting is and all that stuff. But I have faith in the talent that's there, and I feel like they got the coaching staff right this time. They definitely took a step back with Tom Sula, but now that they went to it was obviously a dice roll going away from Harbaugh in the first place, but now that they've kind of gotten a more credible staff, I feel a lot more comfortable heading into the regular season just because Chip's proven. And, people keep saying they're going to be worse than they were last year and their record's going to be the same or worse. I just don't see it. I don't see it.
I don't agree either.
The X factor is Chip Kelly, for sure.
Yeah, no question. So let's move on to the major topic that I think is on, it's what a lot of the news sites and the sports journalists are following right now is Colin Kaepernick versus Blaine Gabbert. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about the journey to where we are, and then I want to get your opinion on some things. So Cap to me was in a really interesting place during free agency earlier this year because Denver was aggressively trying to get him, but he did not want to take a pay cut. They wanted to pay him somewhere between $6 and $7 million to join the Denver Broncos, and he refused to take the pay cut. And I'll be honest, I thought that was a very foolish decision on his part. A, because he wasn't in a position of bargaining power. B, he literally passed up a team where their quarterback was a limping dead man. He literally was dead, and they still won a Super Bowl. This guy literally did nothing, and they won a Super Bowl. That's how powerful that defense was. That's how powerful Denver was. Here he had a chance to go into Denver, rebuild his legacy, and not do a whole lot, and probably be back in the AFC Championship, in a conference championship the very next year. And he passed it up for the money. Now, I also understand that in football, money it's not like other sports. It's hard. The injuries are so high. You never know what you're going to get. So, it's hard to walk away from that guaranteed money. But I thought him refusing Denver's offer, I thought was a little egotistical. And I thought that he did not place himself in the best position to win. What do you think about that?
I agree. Well, I mean, there's a lot of warranted criticism for Cap, but then there's a lot of unwarranted criticism because your average fan doesn't realize that it takes 11 guys to make it work. That's why the NFL is so difficult. Baseball is probably the next one up there because you're dealing with 9 guys, albeit a lot slower pace, but you still have to harmonize with a multitude of players versus basketball. It's only 5 guys at any given moment. It's a lot easier to maintain that chemistry and that rhythm. Whereas football, it's always 11 dudes, and if one breaks down, it's kind of like a chain link. One of them breaks down, it could disrupt the entire play. So That's really all it takes. So you really have to be on your P's and Q's. And with this quarterback battle, I think they're so similar in their skill sets that it's going to really come down to the wire. And that's why, it's not like over in Cleveland where Robert Griffin III has already been announced as the starter for the regular season. He's up against McCown. It was probably a landslide, because RG3, his skill set and his athleticism is far greater than what his competition was. Whereas Blaine and Kaepernick are they're pretty similar. I mean, the only difference is that Cap is a little bit faster and he's got a little bit stronger arm. But other than that, they're very similar. So,
do you think Cap should have gone to Denver?
I'm surprised he didn't. And
I thought in the best interest of his career, that was the best move for his career.
You would have been right back to pretty close to what you had in 2012. Personnel-wise, you have a pretty stout defense. They lost a couple key guys, but they re-signed the core of that. Alden Smith, they re-signed him, and they also re-signed their running back. And they still have good tight ends over there, including Vernon Davis.
And they have a great general manager.
And they have a great GM. So, who by the way, is a quarterback. So, there'd be some toolage there. I'm not sure how in depth it would be, but it'd be pretty good. And that the personnel he's hired in their coaching staff is also very comfortable with developing quarterbacks, regardless of where they're coming from, whether from the ground up, which is what they were going to do with Osweiler, or with proven veterans like Peyton Manning. So he would have been right back to where he was at the top. But, maybe, and because it fell through, because it was obviously a money thing, we all know, what else would it have been? Well, I don't like Colorado so much. Yeah, right. You were in Colorado the entire time you were rehabbing, so there's no qualms there. That wouldn't, not to say that he said that. I'm just saying was the only issue that was preventing anything from happening. Is Cap didn't want to take a pay cut. Denver didn't want to pay 49ers tab, and 49ers said, if you're going to pick him up, you pay the tab, because we're not going to pay him to go to you. That's fair. Everyone had a pretty sound argument, except for Denver. But the only reason that Denver did that was because they didn't have a whole lot of money to play with. So they were kind of in a bind. Otherwise, they probably would have done it had they not had as much cap problems as they do right now. So he, I'm glad he's here, because it's like, all right, okay, you get another shot. Now we get to see because everyone talks about how Kaepernick is a match made in heaven for Chip Kelly, even though Chip Kelly works with whatever quarterback does what he asks them to do.
Yeah.
If we look at the line of quarterbacks. So there's two things that tells me. A, doesn't matter what your skill set is. He doesn't have an ideal skill set that everyone likes to tout. Because it really comes down to accuracy, because it's a balanced offense. It's very, very balanced. And then the other part of it is this guy knows quarterbacks so well that clearly that sought-after skill set doesn't make all that huge of a difference as long as he has somebody there that can pick up his scheme. So Nick Foles went to a Pro Bowl because of that. Mark Sanchez was there, and what is the guy's name for the Rams?
Oh, Sam Bradford.
Sam Bradford was there and played well, even though Sam Bradford is all that really.
Speaking of, do you think Jared Goff is really going to be good?
No, not
at all. On ESPN they're talking right now that the Los Angeles Rams are gonna be fighting for first. They're gonna be sneaky good. Everyone needs to be careful. We're gonna get we have a fourth co-host, Louis Bartone, who I'm gonna drop his name right now. You might have seen him on the Goldcast videos. He's a diehard Los Angeles Rams fan. We're gonna bring him on in a week or so.
Yeah, he's gonna join us either
when preseason
before or
starts.
after preseason.
Yeah. And we're gonna have some talks about the Rams and the Niners. He and I are actually already looking at tickets to go see the Rams when they're here in Los Angeles. But the guy wasn't that good in college.
He was on a terrible team. Cal's never been all that great.
No, I just am there's just no way, man.
So it's one of those things where his skill set is decent and looked better than the cast of characters that were around him. So the theory anyways, is that if you put a good cast around him to better complement his skill set, then he can be, a playmaker at the NFL level. To me, it's like, you know what, I don't see him as a Peyton Manning or an Andrew Luck or even an RG3 for that matter.
Yeah.
That was just NFL ready. To me, he was like 1 year away from being NFL ready.
Yeah.
So what does that mean when I say that? That means that he's going to go through growing pains, and that sure as hell is not going to involve competing for the second spot in the NFC West. They're going to be fighting for the end, the scraps. We have a better shot at fighting in second place than the Rams do, and we'll get into that once we get past preseason.
Yeah, we will. So let's go back to Cap. I think that was a good little interlude. I kind of wanted to talk about that for a second because we're going to talk about that in far greater detail in the weeks to come. The Los Angeles Rams, those pesky Rams. So Kaepernick here. So he decided to stay, and now here he is, and we have I've been calling it all year, the Kaepernick conundrum. So now it's Kaepernick versus Gabbert for the belt, for the starting position. Now, here's the thing about Gabbert. So Gabbert, to me, is this hybrid of Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick. Gabbert is more athletic than Alex Smith, but he sees the field. But he's less athletic than Cap, but he sees the field better than Cap. Although but not quite as athletic. So he's got a little bit of the best of both worlds. He sees the field similar to Alex Smith, but he has the athleticism similar to Colin Kaepernick. And I think that's what makes him really interesting. And similar to Alex Smith, I think that he was in a position early in his career where he wasn't able to shine, and he wasn't able to grow and thrive over in Jacksonville. And now he comes to San Francisco, does fairly well last year. I think that each game, if you really look closely, each game he got progressively worse, and that made me nervous. And it still makes me nervous for this year. But I think that there was obviously potential there. And there was a drive to be good and a drive to he did not take his second shot for granted by any means. And then, Cap placed himself on IR, which opened the door for Gabbert to try and really make a run at this. And so now here we are, and according to reports, they're close, but people are saying Gabbert's a little bit ahead. How do you feel about Gabbert?
I think he's got a good head on his shoulders. He clearly wants to win. He's competitive. Yeah. He's got that edge. He's a lot more extroverted. The one thing I see that he does a hell of a lot better is he builds rapport with his teammates a whole lot better than Kaepernick's introverted, aloof personality, which is kind of always standoffish, and it's kind of the opposite of what quarterbacks are really supposed to do. I mean, name another introverted quarterback that did extremely well. I honestly can't think of any. I mean,
well, Peyton's a little more on the introverted side, but Cap is. I think there's a difference. Okay, here's the word. I think the key word is he's a little bit more standoffish. You know what I mean? There's a difference between being introverted and being standoffish. And I feel like Cap sometimes is a little standoffish, and that's not necessarily a complementary trait when you're in the position of quarterback, because the quarterback is the leader and is the primary communicator between all the offensive positions.
And I don't think he's trying to be cold to anybody. I just think because I think his method of focus and competitiveness is very internalized, and so
yes.
The way that reflects is he appears standoffish to everybody else when he was really just kind of trying to really kind of hone his internal focus. And that's what I get from him. Gabbert is the complete opposite. He's very good with the press. Cap has been very good with the press. This offseason, they've both been very open and speaking with the press. So I think Cap knows that he's got to step up some aspects of his personality in addition to the completion percentage and the defensive reads. Towards the end of training camp, the defense really stepped up, particularly in the secondary, which, by the way, is Jim O'Neill's specialty. And they really shut down Cap and Gabbert, and they didn't get a whole lot of rhythm towards the latter half of camp, which was exciting from a defensive standpoint. It's like, wow, this is the one coordinator that people are not sure of because they didn't know how things went down in the Browns. I see success in the Browns organization, and I saw injuries kind of take over in his second stint there. But when you follow his lineage, like his career path throughout the NFL, this guy has always had success. And so,
aren't you excited for him? I'm pretty pumped to see what he can do. I'm really pumped.
The same reason I'm excited for Chip Kelly, is because Chip Kelly has a string of success. And whether you to go and do the research, fans, follow Jim O'Neill's career. When he was with Buffalo, they led the league in sacks. When he was with the Jets, they were a top defense. When he was with the Browns, they were a top 10 defense. So everywhere this guy's been, he has proven success. So don't take that for granted. That means something in the NFL, and that's why he's in the position that he's in. You do good, you get promoted. So, I know sometimes we see hires and we think, oh, well, it's because there was no other better candidate, and this guy has a lot of experience. That's why we sometimes see candidates that we question and second guess. It's because maybe they were good at one point, but at this point they're the only candidate that's available that has as much experience as they'd like to see in a candidate. So, but in Jim O'Neill's case, remember, the San Francisco 49ers defense statistically was pretty much a top 10 defense at home.
At
On
home.
the road, they were, it was like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. They were the complete opposite. For some reason, they weren't like the Harbaugh era where they could pack their defense wherever they went. They couldn't get that done last year, and it was like they looked like a completely different squad on the road. I'm not sure if that was psychological or if it was schematic in the week-to-week planning, maybe a combination of both. But Jim O'Neill is a very hard-nosed. He's much, much different from what they saw in Vic Fangio, and some of the guys already have said that his scheme is one of the best they've seen since Fangio, or even slightly better than Fangio, because it's a lot more aggressive. It's very much a ball hawking scheme. They're constantly trying to strip the ball. They got 2 picks in training camp. They also strip balls. They also bat balls down. So the secondary, I think, is going to be much, much better than what we saw last year.
I'm so excited to see them play. I'm really pumped. I'm really pumped that part. And defense wins championships. Defense owns the NFL, and it's never owned the NFL more than it has in this decade, from the Harbaugh Niners to the Seahawks to Denver winning the Super Bowl last year. I feel like we are in a golden age of defenses in this decade right now. This is just one unstoppable defense after another.
Well, the league has evolved. It's to the point now where you can't just take a high-powered offense and win it all. That's never really been the case, but this era of football puts a much larger emphasis on defense than ever before. It's very old school in that sense. It kind of makes me think of the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 70s. Put a huge emphasis on defense back in the day, and so it's cool to see, and it's great. And our GM is very much a defensive minded individual. Not to say that he can't pick offense, he just typically does better selecting defensive players. So
and here's the thing. Last decade, who do you have in their primes? You have Peyton, you have Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and Drew Brees. You have those 4 quarterbacks in their prime. I think the reason high-powered offenses, there was such an emphasis on it, was really due in large part to those 4 quarterbacks and how influential they were over the game of football for the last decade. And then in this decade, in order to answer back, teams stack defenses because these high-powered offenses, the rules changes everything. Like the only thing they could do was stack those defenses, and then and eventually the NFL figured it out. Now in this decade, you've seen the response to the last decade's high-powered offenses, and now is these extremely intense high-powered defenses. This is the response.
Totally, and that's kind of, it's like the league, catching up to those players who are now in the twilight of their careers. Peyton's done, so it's only a matter of time before Drew Brees and Tom Brady follow suit, and then we move on to the next. And Aaron Rodgers also is in that bunch as well.
If you notice, the Packers, they've gotten worse every year since they've won the Super Bowl. Like their team drops a little bit more every year.
They're in a league that their philosophy is still dependent on offense and they kind of leave their defense up hanging to dry with only Clay Matthews and a couple other playmakers, and that's just not going to get it done.
They had a top 5 defense the year they won the Super Bowl, and every year after that, it's been in the low to high 20s. And look at how crappy they've done. When they won the Super Bowl, their defense was ranked number 4.
Yep. Just goes to show you. Just reinforces the point we were making about defensive prowess, and how important it is in this era of football. And the Niners are going to be they're going to be a force. Their defensive line is going to be insane.
Yeah, I think we're going to be sneaking. We're gonna talk about records and win losses. That's all coming soon. But I think we're going to be sneaky good this year. I'm not going to say I don't think we're going to be consistent. I don't know if I'm not going to go that far, but I think we're going to be sneaky good. And I think we're going to win some games that people don't expect us to win. And I think we're gonna make some big plays against some big teams, and we're gonna do some stuff that I think people aren't gonna be expecting. I think we're gonna be the easy team to write off, and it's gonna be a mistake.
I agree, and I think this is kind of a scenario where I know last year I was definitely saying the same thing, that they're gonna be a lot better than what people think, and I overestimated the optimism and the kind of X and O jargon talk that was getting touted from the coaching staff. And this was all unproven coaching staff, by the way. I'm the eternal optimist anyway, so naturally I kind of listen to what
we're the faithful. We're the faithful. That's what we do. We have faith, baby.
But in this case, it's the complete opposite, where everyone has proven success on the coaching staff, and now they're taking uncharted talent. We don't know how good we know some of these guys are good. Obviously, Navarro Bowman got his big contract this offseason. Congratulations. So we know who the anchors are, but we don't know who else is going to join the ranks and, become the new era of 49er Pro Bowlers. We just don't know how it's going to turn out. But what I do know, what I can say with a lot more confidence and assurance this season, is that they're going to be a hell of a lot better than they were last year. It will not be the doom and gloom that all of the pundits think. And the pundits were right last year. They were right. I was wrong. But this year they're kind of touting the same thing, and I think the problem with this year with that kind of projection is that they're not taking into consideration all of the proven success that all the coaches have and how that will impact the players much more positively this year than the coaching staff from last year.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Now, early prediction. Who's our starting quarterback? Just to kind of bring it full circle. Who's the starting quarterback week 1?
It's such a close battle. Gabbert has the chemistry of the team, and if he can nail down the accuracy, then he's going to beat out Cap. So I'm going to say Gabbert has the edge right now, and we're going to find out, because in preseason, I'm not sure how they're going to split the reps. I imagine they're going to get an even split, just like they have been in training camp. So, but I'm going to say Gabbert, which I feel like is kind of a gamble, because it's like the Niners. Most NFL teams are not going to say, all right, we're paying him $11 million. He's going to sit on the bench. If Gabbert starts, he won't be there the entire season, and Kaepernick will not sit on the bench the entire season.
Interesting. Well, we're going to find out. So before we wrap this up, Raymond, let them know where they can find us.
You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/49ersGoldcast. You can also follow us on Twitter at 49ersGoldcast. You can also subscribe to us that way you're on top of the latest and greatest podcasts as they come out. And you can do that via YouTube, Stitcher, iTunes. Just hit that subscribe button. You'll always get notified when we have our new episodes out, which will become a regular weekly thing as soon as the season kicks off. We will obviously be getting things started here in the preseason as well, just to get you guys and everyone ready for this highly anticipated season, which will tout a new era of 49ers football that I'm excited to see.
Definitely.
It all pans out.
Definitely. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Join us on the Facebook fan page, because that's where Raymond is really good about posting lots of 49er news. You get all the podcasts, and subscribe to us on iTunes so you can get it first before anybody. Thank you so much for listening. So concludes another edition of the 49er Goldcast. We are the voice of the faithful. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis first, baby.
Boom! We'll see you next time. Same Goldcast time, same Goldcast channel. And we